This past weekend, the series finale for WandaVision premiered. We finally got to see all the twists, turns, reveals, and each of the character arcs were completed for the series. So today I'm going to stop and rank all 10 WandaVision characters from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies and TV and nerdy stuff way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place and consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the WandaVision main characters. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours, and let's get started. In last place is Fake Pietro or Ralph Bohner, what started off as a fantastic cliffhanger reveal that raised a bunch of questions in the audience's mind and spawned 1 million theory videos on YouTube, quickly devolved into an ill-advised bait and switch with a boner joke as the payoff.
You've made a huge mistake.
They used the audience's knowledge of the Fox X-Men universe as well as upcoming MCU projects as a misdirect, but it made the audience think that they were heading in bigger and grander directions than was reality, so by the time you get to the end, it just kind of felt like a cheap trick. Now, one nice detail with this character is all those times that Agnes was talking about Ralph back at home, you realize, oh, she was talking about him. That's a nice little touch, but beyond that, Mr. Boner got shafted. Number 9, the twins. Now, their low placement on this list isn't because they necessarily did anything wrong, but they don't have much of an arc themselves. They grow older, they discover powers, they get in on the action, but their role on the show primarily is to reveal things about Wanda and Vision. They don't have their own story that they're on, conflict that they overcome on their journey. So they are a nice addition. They're used nicely, but they're there to serve our two leads, which they do well. Next up is White Vision, potentially a very cool character for the MCU, but he was introduced far too late in the season to get any development. Now, I loved seeing Fake Vision and White Vision debating philosophy in their own existence.
Free of the rot, is that the ship of Theseus?
Neither is the true ship. Both are the true ship.
And just the simple fact that there were two visions on the show that weren't real was rather clever.
Cool.
But after a lackluster fistfight and some philosophical musings, he just leaves.
Wow, that was weird.
I'm sure we'll see him again. I'm sure he'll get some development. But as for the moment, this felt more like an introduction with potential rather than a satisfying payoff. At number 7, Darcy, a fun side character that added a little bit of levity into the mix. I love that they found a way to take some of these side characters from past MCU films that would have expertise in weird and superheroes and bring them into the fold here, but it seemed like they didn't know what to do with her character in the last few episodes. As soon as she got sucked into the Hex, I assumed that was leading somewhere big and important. No, she just goes on a car ride with Vision, has a conversation with him, and then basically disappears for the last 2 episodes.
Not a great plan.
She only has a cameo in the final episode, smashing into Hayward's car, but other than that, she just kind of disappeared. Even when they're kind of saying their farewells, she's not there. So I kind of suspect Kat Dennings wasn't available when they finished shooting the show. Therefore, they had to do some rewrites to kind of work her out of it, because it seemed like that plot was going somewhere, and then it didn't. Then we have Hayward. I actually really dig this character, at least in theory. He's a survivor of the blip. He lived through a 5-year apocalypse where superpowered people failed to stop superpowered people. Therefore, he wants to come up with a weapon to stop that from ever happening again. Now, that's an interesting character, and the show had the potential to use his character as a way to explore the actual moral implications of Wanda accidentally taking an entire city captive, in which case he would be antagonistic towards Wanda without actually being a villain. But in the final couple of episodes, they just tried to turn him into like this mustache twirling villain, or at least make him seem like a mustache twirling villain because he went out to shoot some kids, though from his perspective, they're not real kids. and therefore they have to arrest him at the end. It's a real shame because it seems like the writers didn't realize how close they were to having a great character.
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
In 5th place is Jimmy Woo, a super charming side character, and through subtle details, given one of the great character arcs of the MCU in his opening scene.
How'd you do it, Scott? Do what? The card trick?
Sir.
Can you knock?
James E. Woo, FBI.
Now, in the series itself, he's not necessarily given like a big character arc, but he's consistently used to move the plot outside the hex along, and every time he's on camera, it's a real treat. He might not be the most important, but he is a nice addition. Next up, Agatha Harkness, a nice, quirky addition throughout the entire series, who's often quite funny and given one of the best songs.
And I killed Sparky too.
And the final reveal that she's not the cause of all of this, she's just taking advantage of it, I think makes sense in light of the character. Now, it might seem like a simplistic villain plotline at first glance, but I think that's the fault of the storytelling, not the character herself. When you see her as a side villain and not the main villain, the simplistic nature of her scheme makes a lot more sense. As I've mentioned before, I think one of the big problems of the season is that it didn't explore enough the moral implications of what Wanda did, and that Wanda is actually the person that endangered a city of people. She's the main conflict. She's the cause of it in that regard. She is the main villain. Agatha is just taking advantage of the fact that Wanda's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and therefore she can draw power from it. And in that perspective, I think the character works. Real quick before I give you my top 3, remember to share your ranking down below in the comment section. My list isn't the right list, just my list, and I would love to see yours. Also, I've done a ton of WandaVision content. You can check out my individual episode reviews right up here, as well as my ranking of each of the episodes. And I've done a couple of exclusive videos over on Patreon. One is a season review that's 25 minutes long, as well as an editorial on what I think the biggest mistake of the show was. So if you want more WandaVision content, I have got it. In 3rd place is Wanda. She's the show's lead character and the person responsible for everything that's taken place. She can be fun and funny in the sitcom portions. She can be terrifying when she snaps out of sitcom mode. It is heartbreaking when you see her backstory and everything that she's gone through.
I can't feel you.
She has such great chemistry with Vision. And of course, we get the reveal of her fully as the Scarlet Witch by the end of the season. But the reason I had to knock her back from 1st place was because the show failed to fully acknowledge just how bad what she did was and hold her accountable for it. She held a city captive for over a week while the people were in agonizing pain. We get to the end of the season and there's no external accountability. She feels bad. She had to lose her fantasy family that she created. She frees the people. But there's no consequences actually from the law. We see Hayward being arrested for violating the Vision's will, I guess. But she just walks off, flies away, and gets to live in an exotic location while reading the Book of the Damned. And I just think the show needed to much better acknowledge that she was the villain of the season. We sympathize with her. We understand why she did what she did. But if you tell this story from the perspective of one of the people trapped in her fantasy world, all of a sudden she is the very clear villain of the story. And they needed to do more to acknowledge that. And they simply didn't. They wanted to present her as a hero. And it's frustrating because there's so many great things about her character in this season because she is fun, charming, emotional, heartbreaking, complex, intriguing, but they messed up in the writing. Our runner-up is Monica. The reason I have her so up high on this list is because she's given so many different things to do in the show without any big missteps or underdeveloping her. Her introduction in episode 4 is one of the best sequences in the entire show, where you see her return from the blip, you see the chaos that unfolded, while kind of giving her a backstory that's meaningful and interesting. Likewise, she's used to contrast with Hayward's cynical worldview. She She gets in on the sitcom action, gets some funny bits in her back and forth with Wanda, and of course, she gets her own superhero origin story. So she's a character that shows up in a bunch of different ways all throughout the show, and it gets a bunch of development. And they didn't do anything that kind of frustrated me with the character. But in first place is Fake Vision. He's super charming and funny and has great chemistry with Wanda. But beyond that, however he is used, he does it with excellence. At times, he can be wise and philosophical and have these amazing conversations with people.
You are familiar with the thought experiment, the ship of Theseus. Perhaps the rot is the memories, the wear and tear of the voyages. The wood touched by Theseus himself.
And he's also an honest character. He knows something is wrong, so he confronts his wife about it. When she plays coy, he does some research and then he confronts her with a little bit more aggressively, and he escalates things as is appropriate when he realizes she is lying to him, something is wrong, and he needs to know the truth. And when he finally realizes what's going on, he sets out to make things right, whatever the cost is. He's a truly decent character, and he's not even real. Therefore, he comes in at number 1. If you want more WandaVision content, check out that playlist right over there. If you want those Patreon exclusives, the link is down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and Marvel too much.